Anthony, I'm not like sounding like your mother by calling you Anthony, am I?
No, Anthony, Tony, Deli. Doesn't
Okay.
matter.
I mean, I've heard you called many things. I just want to make sure I'm calling you the right thing. All right, Straza, we get another one of my old Chicago buddies on the show this week. I'm pretty excited about this. Anthony Crudele. He's an old school floor, started on the floors. I think he started on the floor. We'll have him answer that. But man, I love getting the old school guys on the podcast because, man, they got stories.
Yeah. So we're doing a podcast doubleheader today, and I've been looking extra forward to this one for months now. I've been listening to Anthony's podcast for, 10 years, it feels like at this point. So this will be awesome having him on ours.
Yeah. Inside Baseball, Steve and I recorded another episode earlier today. You, the listener or watcher, don't know that. But we even changed our shirt so it looks like we're doing something different. Right. But it's the same day. We recorded something a little earlier today. One interesting note about our guest today, Anthony, we actually had scheduled this to record a few weeks ago. But a little thing named Hurricane. What was it? What was that hurricane called? The big one that went through Tampa.
Was it Milton?
Milton, yes. So a little hurricane named Hurricane Milton forced Anthony to have to evacuate or should have evacuated. So we had to reschedule. Like we were supposed to record literally like the hour that I think the hurricane was going to make landfall in Florida. So we had to reschedule.
There have been so many hurricanes out of the Gulf this year, I've lost track.
I lived in Tampa for 5 years in the late 90s, early 2000s, and I must have been there during a glorious window because we did not have a single close call at all when I would live there. I mean, nothing. So I must have just hit that like Goldilocks window because it hasn't been that way since I've left, it seems like.
New thing. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's bring Anthony on. Let's welcome Anthony to the show. Anthony, great to have you on the Off the Charts podcast. Long overdue. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here. Luckily, Milton was it's kind of a dud for us down here in Southwest Florida. Can't say that for other parts of Florida, unfortunately, but luckily for us, this one was not so bad. So I'm back in studio. I'm glad to be with you guys.
Did you evacuate for it?
No, I didn't evacuate. I wasn't in the evacuation zone. I was like literally like a mile outside of it.
So you had to make a decision then.
Yeah, you know what? I've got two older parents and I've got two dogs. My wife, I said, you know what? Where are we going to go? I mean, am I going to go to Miami? It's like that one creeped up on everybody. That hurricane was, I had just gotten back from Chicago, and the next day my wife's like, oh, there's a hurricane like warning or watch, whichever one was worse. And I'm like, well, what? And next thing you know, we're like, I'm packing up the house, so
it happened fast. We have this problem down here in Key West because they're moving like as they're coming and about to hit, like all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's redirected. It's going to hit north now. So if I'm driving up from the Keys, I'm like, this is crazy. Like sometimes you're worse off and then you're stuck on the highway and you get hit by a hurricane. No, thank you. No.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't get gas. I'm like, where am I going to go? I only had so many hair products, packed away for a few days. So it's like, you never know, man. Then you got real problems, Sean. All of a sudden I look like a complete mess somewhere.
We're glad that we finally got you on and that you stayed safe through hurricane season.
Well, Anthony definitely is the first guest we've had on the show who has a professional looking studio. Look at that backdrop. I love it. This is a guy who knows what he's doing, a real pro.
Yeah, it's a real pro. All I have, it's a wall. It's actually a gray wall with a blue light on it, and then my AC logo.
When did you start?
Awesome.
I do have some good lighting here, though.
When did you start doing your podcast, Anthony? You're really one of the original podcasters, are you not?
Yes, well, when it comes to futures, for sure. I started Futures Radio in 2014, so 10 years ago, and people were like, "What the hell's a future?" It's kind of funny, actually.
Great show. You do a great job.
Thank you.
I think I was a guest on that show many, many years ago.
Oh yeah, yeah, you were on. I think even more than once.
I think so. Yeah, and I appreciate that. All right, so let's get down to business here, Anthony. One of the things I've always liked about you is, in addition to being a trader, I feel like you have a zen about you. Like you kind of have this mental space where you're taking the whole picture into consideration when it comes to trading. Like for traders, it's not just about our P&L. Yes, our P&L is important, but what that P&L represents to the rest of your life and how you live your life and how you approach your life, I feel like these are things that are front and center for you. And I see it in the way that you tweet. I hear it in the way you talk to other people, like on your podcast. And I've hung out with you at happy hours in the past. And you've always been a guy who strikes me as someone who knows that there's more to life than just trading. Am I hitting any nerves here? Am I making sense?
I mean, that's 100% the way I am now. I wouldn't say I was always like that, but I've had a few scares in my life and I've lost friends. And, as we get older, you start to see things in a little bit of a different light, and I just feel that, I've learned to really have that. I wouldn't say Zen. I mean, I'm thankful that someone actually thinks that of me. So I'm actually still very an intense person internally, but I've just learned to let it go, man. Just let shit go. I mean, it's just like at some point you're just like, look at you, you're doing this for a living. You love it. You're passionate, and it sucks when you lose, and we all want to win. But I love people. I love life. I love enjoying life, and I'm not going to let it hold me back from living the life that I want to live. And so many people just get so consumed by this business that they just can't see past the screens, and it's unfortunate.
So there's obviously a journey in getting to this place, because I agree, Sean, like you're one of those guys where you seem like you figured something out. So what were some of the big experiences really that happened along the way that kind of sculpted you?
I think there's a lot of events. First off, I came from the floor, and seeing people on a regular basis and see how they live their lives coming from trading was always an aspiration of mine anyway, because, when you get into this business, one of the things that you did it for is so you can go and actually live life. And so I saw a lot of people really live life to the fullest. And so I think experiencing that, number one, it was very, impactful on how I wanted to be, what my vision was for my future. My vision was to be able to trade and to be able to live the lives that I saw other people lead. Now, it didn't start off that way because, as we all know, it's pretty damn hard to make money in this business. But over the course of time, really a lot of major setbacks. Making money and then losing a bunch of money and not being able to go out and participate in things, like you miss stuff. Having some anxiety issues. Waking up Christmas morning, one morning, I'm years in my trading career. Everyone's got gifts for everybody. I'm totally busted. You'd think, I was a member of the exchange at that time. I still had no money to buy gifts. I was like, had a Tony Soprano moment. It scared the shit out of me. And then the next thing you know, I had a heart attack at 36. It's a pretty big deal. That was a stress heart attack. It was not because I have cardiovascular disease. So that was another setback. And so, you just constantly just keep putting back. And then you think to yourself, you're outside looking in to other people enjoying life. And here's you, spending, all your days looking at charts and grinding it out. And you did this to make money and enjoy life. And when you're not making money, you're just miserable. And so at some point you just say, it's just not going to be me. I think everybody's got to get to a point where it's a level of frustration to where you just don't want to be that person anymore. Like you just, and what the outcomes are. If you're not making as much money as you want, then go do other things. If not, quit bitching and enjoy it a little bit.
This is so important, and this just happened to me today, guys. I midday today took a little break. Had an appointment with my chiropractor. Great guy, does great work on my back. I need that. But he's like one of these guys that when the market gets hot, he starts to dabble in things, right? Like he traded GameStop back in the day. Like I was like shaking my head, like, what are you doing, right? But anyway, he was talking to me today, and I mentioned to him about how I was recording a podcast. I didn't mention your name, Anthony, because he wouldn't know who you are. But I was just like, I got to get back to the office because I'm recording a podcast this afternoon. And he was asking me, he's like, what's it about? And I'm like, oh, I'm interviewing traders. We're talking about trader stuff. And he's like, is he going to reveal the secrets to make money? And I'm like, maybe, but there are no secrets. And he's like, well, then how do these guys make money? He's like, what's their strategy? I'm like, and I was telling him, and I caught myself in this weird spot. I'm like, it doesn't matter what a strategy is. The strategy might be the least important thing to making money. It's how you deal with it, right? How you follow your own rules and how you deal with success and how you deal with failure. That's where the rubber meets the road. It has nothing to do with a strategy. A strategy might be the smallest part of it. Would you agree with any of that?
I think it just, I mean, well, coming from, his position, it's the only thing that really matters to them at that point, because it doesn't matter psychologically how well you're built. If you don't have a strategy, you're not going to make money, right? So I think initially the technical aspect or the fundamental aspect is all that we can focus on, because that's what we think our path is, right? But that only gets you so far, right? I mean, why does everybody out there that teach a strategy, a successful strategy, and there's actually a lot of really good people out there that have subscriptions that teach people strategies that are successful, but why is it that day in, day out, a lot of them that follow this person almost maybe exactly trade for trade don't make money like the person putting it out there? And it's because of those things you talked about. And so I think the strategy is important, but it only gets you so far.
Yeah, absolutely. You, somewhat related, you had a tweet, I don't know, a couple months ago maybe, and I apologize if this feels out of context because I'm only taking a snippet of the tweet, but because you wrote a long tweet, but there was one line in it that really stuck out to me, and let me know if this rings any bells. You wrote, "Trading isn't just about market timing; it's about life timing." Does that ring any bells? Does that hit home with you? Can you expand on that idea? Because I thought this was a wonderful riff that you went on Twitter.
I'm trying to remember exactly what drove that tweet to me, but yeah, I mean, so much of it is. I mean, let's face it, and where you are in your life, and when you begin to trade, there's going to be, a lot of that is going to matter in how you end up. Right. I mean, because if you start in a position where you need to make money or you need things to happen quickly, your mindset's, you're already at a massive disadvantage. So, if you're in a place in your life where you have some financial success or you have some financial backing to be able to step into the markets, and you've already thought about this and you have, time to work through the initial issues, yeah, you're setting yourself up already for a more positive outcome. But I mean, I think a lot of that was just thinking about all the things that happened in my life and how different things happened in my life where a lot of my success comes when you don't have a lot of underlying things behind you that you're worried about, right? You don't have these lot of monkeys on your shoulders or your things where it's like, I actually can focus in on what I'm doing. I don't have distractions. I don't have children to take care of, something's happening, to a family member or something's happening in your life. A lot of the success I had early on, I just didn't have any other variables out there that were thrown at me. And as life came at me, you go back to why I am the way I am now versus the younger, Deli. It's, the difference is that because I've had different experiences set me back, that I just feel a lot different about it, and so I know that there's going to be times where something's wrong in my life, whether it's a family member or anything that could be happening, it's an argument. It's just maybe I just woke up out of bed and I'm just not feeling well. It doesn't matter, so you kind of roll with those punches a little bit differently. And I don't force the issue there. Most people aren't mentally prepared to be able to, come in and know that there's going to be ebbs and flows. Everyone that's newer is most likely going to be forcing things through because they think that they can. And they just don't know that where you are in your life or what's happening in your life is actually impacting the way that your patients are, your discipline, two things that are talked about a lot, but those are two things that really stem from your preparation and just where you are in the right mindset, right? Most people are going to be patient and disciplined when they're coming from a good place. They'll be more strict to following what it is they set forth to do versus many other people that have other things going on in their lives and, they're distracted subconsciously and they come to the surface in times where, they need to be patient or disciplined. And so they surface during those times of weakness, because anytime money's involved and you're losing money, that's when things start to surface that, cannot be good.
This is one of those themes that comes up so much, Sean, where it's like anybody who comes on here and says, "Oh, I tried trading to pay the bills and absolutely blew it." It never works, right? I think that's what you're speaking to.
Yeah,
and Anthony, it's definitely part of it.
Yeah. And Anthony, I'm going to throw another one of your tweets back at you because I think it builds to what you were just saying. This was another tweet from October 22nd. I'll read it to you in full this time. It's because it's shorter. It says, "Life is full of transactions, but not all are monetary. Some traders chase success, believing more capital is the key to improvement. Yet, the most valuable currency in obtaining success as a trader is time." And everything that you're saying, you've earned the right to say those things because you've put in the time, right? You've been doing this for 20 years and you've experienced everything the market can throw at you. And sometimes it's just, you gotta survive in this game, right?
Time is the best asset that we have in this business, because I look at it like this. I mean, if a new trader or a trader who is relatively new, and has not experienced maybe a different market cycle comes in with a large amount of money, most likely they're going to lose a large amount of money if the market doesn't do exactly what they wanted, versus a trader who spent a lot of time and at some point, loses their money, can maybe take a small amount of money and build back up. And so I don't think that the capital itself really is going to dictate where, a winning trader, right? I mean, so many traders think that, I don't have enough money or I don't have enough this. Well, it's just that you don't have enough money right now to maybe be in a position to be a successful trader because you have bills to pay. And that's a different conversation, versus it's that you don't have enough money to trade. I've said this so many times before. I think that, losing traders and winning traders, one of the key differences is that a losing trader, it's not that they can't make money. It's that they can't make enough money. They can't make as much money as they want to make, I should say. And versus a winning trader, a lot of times is happy to continue to make some money and to grow, and their time horizon's a lot longer. So they're either, not only are they, and I don't mean this just in terms of like, what their trading strategy is, they're long-term holders or anything like that. I'm talking about there's just their time horizon of success, of what they're looking at, their vision beyond, just 1 days of trades is it's months and years down the road. So they think longer term. So therefore they slow things down in the present. And so they're able to manage risk better. They're able to, they're not trading nearly as big and pushing the limits as far as they need to. They could take a small amount of money and turn it into a larger amount of money over time through small wins. And so those types of traders are more patient. They let trades work through a little bit longer. They're probably holding smaller positions for even a little bit longer for intraday traders, versus the traders that want something today or need something today or have such short-term dreams and goals and aspirations of what they want. Their mindset is just, it's too quick to turn a buck. And so they might be making money, a good majority of the time, but when things aren't going their way, they're just blowing it just as quick as they made it, because they're so short-sighted. And I think that's really what I try to look at that from that perspective is that if you can give yourself time in this business, at some point you're going to find a market cycle where you are going to do really well and you're going to have enough capital to capitalize on it. I look at my 25 plus year career as an independent trader, and there's just maybe a handful of cycles where, everything really worked out very well for me. All the times in between, they're grinds. I'm not always making money. And, there's months where I go without making money, and sometimes even years, right? I mean, you maybe not years, but a year, and then you're like, okay, this year sucked, or whatever. And you can't, but you're still there. I go back to, COVID, 2008, like those years were super volatile, 9/11, the end of the, basically the bubble burst in 2000. All of those different times, like those were times where market volatility was really high, and I actually did pretty well. I'm a futures trader, not a stock trader, so it's a little different for me. And so those moments they're rare. They don't come around all the time where it's like the market's just going to be great for 12 months. And so I've learned that by seeing these cycles that I just got to be around for the next one. I don't need to kill it right now. And some people that are killing it right now, that just means that their strategy is this market environment is conducive to their strategy. That's the only difference. Doesn't mean that they're better than you or me or anybody else. Right now it's working for them. Good. Great. That's awesome. People need to be more appreciative of like what that actually means. Because at some point, what those traders may or may not realize, especially the newer ones on social media, you're gonna have a drawdown. You're gonna have periods of time where you aren't making money. I don't care how much money you've made. It's a question is, what do you do during that period? Can you exist long enough to when that period comes back, you can be in the same position of power and have control over your destiny? Because that's the only difference. That's the only difference between the way I look at myself and versus maybe some traders that haven't experienced that, is that I know that I'm going to keep myself in business for that next time that comes around. And I'll be here to be able to put the trade on when it matters. And during the other times, I might lose, I might not do great, but I'll still be here. And that's my goal.
How long, I love this. This is great advice. How long is it okay for you to lose money for? Obviously everybody's different, but like what are some of your longest losing streaks? And then how is that? Like, what do you do mentally in those times?
Mm-hmm. I mean, how long? I mean, I look at it like this. It's like the time is not as big of an issue for me as much as it is like how much capital am I burning through? If I'm losing, I'm just dialing everything back. I'm just trading less. So I might go months even where I make one trade a week, and it's just like, I think the most important thing for people that start to struggle in any sort of market environment is to remove yourself from that environment and just look at it from a different perspective, right? When you get so knee deep in it, you never see past, you never see the forest through the trees, and so when you get into those positions, I'm my goal at this point in my career is not time, how long I lose. It's just a matter of managing it when I know it's not conducive. And anybody who's done this for, let's say, a handful of years has been through a couple cycles probably. So you could understand whether or not it's you, the market, or your strategy. I mean, that's the question, right? Is it me? If it's me, then I don't know how much time it takes. Sometimes mentally I just suck and I'm just not good. So maybe I need to take a step back. Is it the market environment? Okay, this market environment sucks, doesn't work for me. I got to take a step back. Or is it my strategy? My strategy blows and maybe I have to go back to the drawing board. So if I look at those three categories, I just have to once again withstand that storm to be able to evaluate it and to get back in. So I don't really look at it as to how long. Some of my longest losing streaks have probably been 18 months. I mean, where like I've not gotten back to where I was, when I originally started. So you look at from point A to point B. So like how long is a drawdown, right? A drawdown, let's just say I went from point A where I had X amount and I've gone 18 months to get back to that. Yeah, that's happened. I mean, that's not fun, but you get back there.
Earlier in my career, I would do well in bull markets and then give half or quarters of it back in bear markets. And I thought I could just flip my strategy on its head during a bear market, right? And it'll work the same. And it just didn't. And it took like 3 cycles for me to finally figure out in hindsight, it's like, this was so obvious. Why did this take so long? I thought I always had to be trading. But it took me about 3 cycles to realize just do a whole lot less, barely participate, and play more golf in bear markets. And that just like made all the difference for me. And it's like, why did that take so long? Obviously. But you have you feel like you have the need to always be invested, and if you're not, it's like you're not working. Like I used to feel like, oh, you're lazy, you loser. Like how could you not be trading? The market's open, but that's just our human brains, I think, tricking us.
One of the easiest ways to grow your P&L over time is to lose less and to cut your expenses. I mean, I live extremely lean. On my expenses, cutting my expenses has been a huge part of my growth and success as a person. I have very minimal expenses now. I mean, could I buy a bigger house? Sure. Could I buy more things? Sure. But the reality is I know I have to withstand a storm again at some point, and so there was a time in my 30s where I had 3 homes, bunch of cars, whatever it is, you know what I mean? Thought I was Mr. Big Shot, and I was just way over my skis. I wasn't at that point. when I should have just dialed it back, had a bunch of cash, and just bought the S&P, right, Sean? Just come in, buy 50 and walk out. Why am I even trying to trade this thing? But of course, you think you're smarter than everybody else. And the reality is that once you start to make money, you carry more expenses, your lifestyle changes, your tastes for things change, right? You go from buying the $5 bottle, $10 bottle of wine to the $50 bottle of wine, and everything changes. So therefore, you're always keeping up with what this new lifestyle is. And so the reality is, what I've learned is that I don't need to make as much, because I know that when things are going really well, I don't need to press so hard where I have to make all this extra money. I mean, I do think in some ways I have to make more. I always try to press when I'm winning, but I don't need to get stupid. But I do know that when it dials back, I've got to recognize it quicker and make sure my expenses are low so I can withstand the storm. Once again, I need to consistently buy time, because that's the only reason I'm here, is because I've bought time. Other people that haven't lasted as long, it's just it may not be because they couldn't make money. It could be because they couldn't make enough money, or just other factors in their life took them away from it. And that's what I see time and time again.
This is such an important topic, because new traders come into this business and they think that the key to success is to have a great strategy and then work on the mental side of it to make sure that they could succeed in the market. And that's important for sure. But what does not get talked about, not nearly enough, is the simple things like learning how to balance your personal budget, right? How to make sure you've got enough money in the bank to pay your bills on a month-to-month basis. I don't think there's enough attention paid to that. And I am exhibit A1 on that, especially early in my career. I fucked that up so bad. On the one hand, I'm doing great trading. On the other hand, I'm the worst at managing my personal money. I didn't save anything. I didn't buy any real estate. When I had the money to do all these things, I didn't do any of the smart things, right? I just kept rolling it into the market. And then when I'd hit losing streaks, I'd give it all back. And I have so many regrets about that. I mean, that's a whole podcast all by itself. We won't go down that rabbit hole. But I just don't think that there's enough talked about for new traders about, keep your personal finances simple, say no to debt, right? I mean, yes, buy a house if you can do that. That's good debt. But, don't get in over your head with expensive cars and expensive car payments, and don't run up bills on your credit cards, and don't go on those crazy vacations that you don't really need, but you just want to go because your friends are going. Those things, man, I mean, those things are the things that really hold you back, because you were talking about it earlier about how, when you're trading, you're not just trading what you're thinking about the market. You're carrying your baggage with you, right? The things that are dragging you down, the things that are worrying you outside of your trading office, right? If you got a whole bunch of debts hanging over your head, or if you don't have enough money saved, or whatever, that stuff, you're already behind the 8 ball trying to make money in the market if you got to worry about all that other stuff too.
Yeah, you're stealing from your own future is basically what it is. And until you've done this for a long period of time, you don't recognize it. Hard expenses just crush people. I mean, it's just what it is. I mean, and buying the cars or the watches or the vacations, I mean, that stuff is, it's also a factor. In some ways, I almost think that they should buy some sort of things that they could sell in case they need to. I mean, I've bought Rolexes where I've had to sell them. I've done stupid shit, whatever. You just, at least those, they bail me out at least at some point, right? But I go back to it. It's just, this is one of the hardest things to understand as a trader. That's why we talk about why this business has a revolving door. And it's because people come in this way with these expectations or these needs that the market just doesn't care about. The market doesn't think about it, doesn't know. And there's a reason why there's a short shelf life. It's because people come in with short-term goals, short-term dreams, short-term aspirations, and with high expectations, and they're just unachievable. I mean, I go back to what I said earlier, and I'm going to say it again because I think it's just something that's so important. It's not that traders can't make money. It's just that they can't make enough as they want. They can't make enough money. And it's it's the continued struggle. I mean, you see Nvidia up X amount percent, we're watching today as the earnings are, right? I mean, I know it didn't really rally today, but you look at what happened with all these other trades, and people only see the positive side of this business. When they come into it, that's all they see. Mm-hmm. They never see the negative side of it. They never see anything about real life that is attached to trading. They see highlight reels. I mean, that's basically what social media is now. It's a highlight reel. I'm the best on this, on that, whatever, and the reality is I know I'm not the best. I never wanted to be the best. I don't care to be the best. I want to be the best that I can be. I know that sounds cliche and it's kind of boring, but at the end of the day, because I've seen enough, I remember when I was in the pit and I look at it, and this is something I think has really helped keep me grounded. And I don't want to say grounded as like, I've done so great or whatever, but just like in a position where I always feel like I am like, know who you are, understand it, be humble, be grateful to be in this business. When I was in the pit, I mean, I remember having some of the best days in my career where I'd make, 5-6 figures, right on the open, great days. I wish I had some of those days right now. It's been kind of tough, but nonetheless, I had them. Come out and you think to yourself, gosh, I got to be, definitely one of the top performers, at least in my office, right? And I mean, it was probably never a situation where I was number one, almost never. And so I think about it, and this is just in this small little world of, just the pit guys and other friends I have on the screen. And there may be a time that I don't know that I ever was maybe who had the best day out of the group of friends I had, or the best week or the best month. And so I realized it's like, listen, man, as good as you're doing, you're like, who the hell do you think you are? Right. And so it just always made me realize that there's always somebody doing better. There's always somebody bigger. There's always somebody, who knows more than you do. Keep your head in your lane, man. Be who you are. Don't worry about that other shit. Eventually you stop caring because you're like, I'm obviously, this is who I am, and I've done pretty good in my career. And you look at it and go, I couldn't even be the top 5 of my friends, let alone to think I'm the top 5, in the world or whatever, right? I mean, not that you ever think that big, but you see some people are saying this is the best trader on this, the best trader on that. Dude, are you serious? Because you made what, 10 grand, 50 grand? Come on, man. And so I've seen it in real life, and it's like, I don't even think about that stuff. And I'm happy for other people's success. Yeah. But what happens is that they get so ahead of themselves, man. They do, because they don't understand, I think, how big this world really is, guys, right? I mean, there's so many people out there in this game that are so good that it's just like, be happy to be a part of it, be grateful you're here, and treat other people with respect, and it would be a better place. But it's just, unfortunately, it's just kind of not the way it is.
I want to go back to something you said a few minutes ago. Lifestyle drift is real. It's sticky, right? It's like inflation. Big Macs are $15 right now. They're not going back to $5. If you start drinking that $25 bottle of Cabernet, it's going to be hard to go back to the $15 bottle, start drinking Josh again. But you said you kind of dialed it back from a lifestyle, 3 houses, Rolexes. What was that like? I know that can't be easy.
Well, I haven't dialed back my wine or maybe some of the things I've other bought. So we got to pump the brakes there a little bit, Steve. I gotta, no, but you know what it is? It's just you pick and choose, right? And you find like what you like and what you can do. I could overspend with the best of them, but I spend where I like and where I feel that I'm getting, maybe not the most value, but where I think it's the best, for me. So, there's certain things I do in my life. I just spend the money and I don't think about it. Right. But there's other things I look at and go, I don't need, what makes me happy on a regular basis at this point, I spend money on. Right. And so like I spend money on wellness. I get in regular like IV treatments, I'm getting, I'm doing all sorts of like stuff like that. I'm doing Pilates. I do that. I do drink good wine, but I'm not drinking like my good wine every night. Yeah. I do good dinners. Obviously I spend money on some other things as well, but I'm not like overspending on like my hard expenses. So therefore, to me, that's the biggest thing. Like I keep that at zero basically, and I don't go and buy things that are going to be baggage for me in the future, right? So it's like if I go and buy a watch, I buy the watch. I don't borrow to buy the watch, right? I mean, if I go to buy or whatever it is I do, it's like I own it, it's mine, right? And so I think that you get to a point where you just got to work a little harder to get to sustain some level that makes you, happy, right? And it doesn't mean, it can be different for everybody, right? But there's certain things that I do on a regular basis that keep me very, I want to say happy, but just like this is part of my lifestyle. But I will stay away from other expenditures that are going to take away from that. So that's the way I look at it now.
Right.
Go
ahead, Sean.
Sorry, Steve. Go ahead. Continue your thought.
Well, we were on the topic of wellness, so I just have to ask, Anthony, I've heard you speak very openly about the health scare that you had. A heart attack at 36, right?
Yeah.
Naturally an eye-opening experience for you. What did you take away from it? Did you think about quitting trading? Did that ever cross your mind?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I didn't think about it right away. Right. I mean, right away, I was back at my screens. I was in the hospital on Friday. I was back at my screens on Monday. I was in the hospital at the end of the week again because I thought I was having another heart attack. So, I wasn't that smart. And it didn't hit me right away. I think that the biggest fear I had after my heart attack was my identity. What am I going to do to make money? I mean, screwed. I'm done. If I can't do this, what do I do? So that was a concern, and obviously my wife was concerned about that, and it was like at that point in time, I had some money, but you never know what's enough and what do you have? And it goes back to it again, it's like, shit just happens and you're just like, whoa, so what it really did I think about quitting over time? I looked at it and said, you have two options. Either you quit and you leave the business, which, I wouldn't have wanted to do, but I would have done it because I'd rather live than, the alternative. Or you figure out a way to exist in a way where you can still do what you want to do, but you have to have a new vision, right? And it goes back to, it's like the vision I had changed, right? The vision was Anthony's a gunslinger, his whole career, makes $100 million or whatever. And I'm not saying that's my vision, but it's like the vision is like, you're trading and you get into this atmosphere where all of a sudden that's all you do. You don't have to worry about anybody else. And that's all you do to the point where I was like, okay, that's probably not going to happen now. It still may, but you have to regroup and figure out how to do that. I started a podcast. And so I looked at that and said, this is something you could do that keeps you in the business. And I didn't make really any money with it for years. I really never made a lot of money with the podcast, to be perfectly honest with you. It's not like, but it's twofold. One is it took me away from to just only being focused on trading and like that, just that mental just strain that we have where it's all we think about. So it took me there. It opened my eyes up to all these other people and all these other strategies. And it really helped me, I think, take better hold of my trading because I wasn't it bought me a little, once again, it bought me some time. It bought me time to be able to make a little bit of money, not think about trading at certain moments, focus on other traders, see what other traders were going through and what their issues were and what other things that were people that were doing great. And I think it really helped mold me into a better person. And I got to meet so many people. I mean, that's how I met you guys, and so I looked at it and it put me out there in the industry in a way that would have never happened if I didn't do that. And so I was very thankful for that. And I also just learned to just be a smaller trader and to be happy with that. I mean, there is, there's an ego attached to this, right? In my early days, I wouldn't get out of bed to make $5,000. I mean, I just wouldn't because I just was like, oh, that's the way I thought. I was just like, again, I was a big shot and I was an idiot, but that's the way I was, right? I'm going to go into the floor. I'm going to do my thing. And I say I wouldn't get out of bed for $5,000. That's not necessarily true, but it's like the attitude I had. So I should clarify that, right? I mean, and so then at some point you get to the point where you can't even make 500 and, you're just like, wow, all of a sudden I'm just like as cold as I've ever been. And all of a sudden I've got health issues, potentially. And you're just like, holy shit, how does this even happen? And so I just said to myself, I could be smaller And can I build it up in a different way? So I've gone to more swing positions. I've gone to more, just using options. Because so I actually could multitask while I have an options position on, and I'm not some options expert by any stretch, but like I'll buy calls and puts. I'm a directional trader, so the way I look at things, so I'm not doing like these crazy little different options, strategies. But nonetheless, I found a way to exist in a way that I feel comfortable with and in control, and I found a way to make money again. Now, once again, it comes back to what are my expectations? My expectations at this point in my life were exist, time, build, grow wealth, reduce costs, reduce what you're spending. You could still make a lot of money, figure it out, and then next thing you know, I'm on my way and just life's taking me in, a whole nother, direction with everything I'm doing now. I mean, I'm working with Ninja Trader. I partner with them. I'm doing other things that have grown. I've invested in other businesses. I've done all sorts of other different things that financially taken me to another level that I didn't know I would be at. Right. And so you got to exist, man. So much of this is just exist. You don't know what's going to happen. And at some point you find your way. As long as you have the commitment and you have control on the day-to-day basis of who you want to be and what you want to do, you'll find a way.
So you're talking about maybe a less aggressive or simplified strategy, smaller position size, basic stuff. How far did those things go in reducing your stress levels?
Oh, a lot, man. I mean, I think short-term day trading is
crazy. You
have to have such a clear head and almost like no risk attached to your life to have really, I think, a great chance at success. And I know that might sound harsh, and I mean a great chance doesn't mean that you don't have a chance. But I think that when I look at the world that I want to grow, which is trading, people have to be realistic, and they're just not. And that's just a huge problem. It's like if you want to come in and be a successful day trader, and you're a single parent with 2 or 3 kids, and you're trading their college money, it's probably going to be a tough road for you. Don't do it. But if you're somebody who's, got a job and you're working at night and you can trade and you feel, you're healthy, you don't have a lot of underlying, issues in your life, and maybe you're just recently married, or it's just you single and a dog in a city, or your wife's got a great job, or your husband's got a great job, or you've got something where you have some backstop or you have minimal expenses. Yeah, your chances are going to go up tremendously. And then maybe you have an opportunity to come in and have great success as a really short-term day trader. But the clarity that it takes is it's a Super Bowl every day for you if you don't have money. Because if you're not on your game every single day, at some point it will catch you. It's just the way it is. I mean, I like I said, I don't want to be harsh, but it's like that's reality. So if you know that, do things to put yourself in a better position to win. Expand your time horizon. You still could be a day trader, but then risk smaller. Now, most of these people are trading too leverage. Most people are doing all of the wrong things that the traders that are making money are doing. And that's just the simple truths, right? That you look at all the best of the best, and they have time, right? I was just looking at Snowflake today. It was funny. It was like, I remember watching months ago, Snowflake's earnings just came out. And I know that I'm a futures guy, but I watch these stocks. Like I was watching like Gerstner talk about how everyone was accumulating Snowflake as the thing was just getting torn up to the downside. And I'm like, you know what? I remember I bought it like at 120. It was just sitting there and whatever, right? And even me, I wormed my way out of that trade. Now the thing's almost at 150. And it's just like, they have more time than I did, right? I easily could have kept it, but mentally I just was shot with it, and I saw the action and I burned out of it. But once again, who makes more money? The people with more time. It's always the case. Look at Warren Buffett. Look at Druckenmiller. I mean, these guys are, well, why do they continually succeed? Because they slow things down and make the best decisions for time. And that doesn't mean that they're not actively managing on a day-to-day basis, but their time horizon's way longer than yours. And you're going to beat them? Good luck.
We were just in the Snowflake 11/15 130 strike calls. They expired worthless. It's up, what, 15% here after market? We did not.
It's unbelievable, right?
So I hear you.
You did not have enough time. So Anthony, it's interesting to hear you talk about time, and I agree with everything you're saying, absolutely. I imagine it took you a lot of soul searching and introspection to get to that thought, because you started out as a pit trader, and pit traders, they're not thinking about time. They're thinking about flipping out of their position for a tick or two. They're in and out, within minutes, within seconds sometimes. Talk to me about that shift for you and how you worked towards making that shift of being a ultra scalper to someone who thinks in broader timescales.
There's three parts to this. First off, with pit traders, there was real edge. And what I mean by real edge is that we leaned on the brokers. So imagine a broker comes in and says, even on 100 in the S&P, and you as a local, if you bid 20s or quarters right in front of that, even on 100, at worst case scenario, if you get filled on that, on 100 of them, you could turn around and hit the broker right behind you, because we don't know that the broker is going to cancel that order, but the likelihood of them canceling it is low because they're bidding at an open market in the pit. Now, there's a possibility that they even go up and bid 20s and halves after you did. And if you bought them right in front of that broker, you could turn around and sell it to them. And so locals in the pit had a completely different edge than what short-term scalpers had on the screen. Now, what I learned to do was really try to be a really good tape reader and be a market maker before the real market makers that we call them now stepped in. And so when I was trading electronically, the edge that I had is that, for the short-term scalper side of things, is I could see the order flow in the pit because I was looking in the pit. And over time, I got such a good feel of what was happening on the screen that not only did I have the edge of looking into the pit, that I was able to actually move the screen a little bit, because I would just take out a bid or an offer and I could most likely turn and burn out of it, 50 to 500, just depending on what was going on in the situation. And so the edges were different, right? I mean, now the market makers are so fast. I mean, let's also not forget too, Sean and Steve, when you go back to when I was a super short-term scalper, I started trading the S&P when I was at 600. Okay. You get to the point where I remember when it got to 1,000 and then 1,500, the 1,500 was the high for years. And then so the ranges were small. So a 1% move, small, right? And so you pretty much predicted a 10-point range every day. It never really was much more than that on the average. Now, once again, could it have been 8 points? Could it have been 16 points? Sure. But at least in those days, the ranges were small enough to where if we got on the outer edges of the ranges, unless there was news, most likely we made a 10-point range. Okay. So there's little things that we were able to do with size to where we didn't feel like we were going to get killed. And that's ultimately all it came down to, is don't get killed, because at some point I'm going to find an opportunity to step in and trade with size and make it back. Well, that changed. Right. And what changed is speed. Man, speed just became such a huge thing that, I was able to exist through 2008, 9, and 10. Really, 9 was a terrible year for me. It was the worst year of my career, to be honest with you. Sucked. But 10 was pretty good, and 8 was my best year. One of my best years. So speed wasn't a big deal then, but then really after 10, I felt like the algo side of things just really took hold, and it became super, super hard for me to find almost any edge in the S&P and NASDAQ and short-term scalping, because I couldn't scratch trades anymore. And I go back to where I said we're the pit guys. Their only goal was to scratch a trade. I mean, that's it. Can I scratch a trade? And in the screen, no matter how big I was trading, 100 lots, I could scratch trades or I could lose a couple ticks because I was quick enough to hit the bid or the offer. And if it didn't turn or go my way right away, there was obviously enough liquidity I could just burn right out of it. Nowadays, try putting on a 50 to 100 lot in the S&P and just try to scratch it. Just try to scratch it. On a busy day, I mean, I don't even know that I could scratch a 5 lot in the NASDAQ, or on 1 lot. I mean, really, because it moves so fast. Because a 1% move now is huge. So these short little ranges, like what people call themselves scalpers now, they're scalping for points when we scalp for ticks. It's just a completely different world. So for me, it was not a matter of how did I adjust from being that person? I had no choice. The market was too fast for me. My P&L wasn't good anymore. I wasn't making any money. It was too stressful, and I just could not be a short-term scalper. What was once an edge was no longer. And so I had to adapt either way, right? And I think that's probably what led a lot to what my heart attack was, because I said 2010 was like a good year for me. Then 11, 12, and 13, they were just like grinders, man. It was like I was barely making money, just enough to pay the bills. And it's just as like at some point, you're just like, I think my heart attack for me was a cry for help, whereas like at some point, like you either got to figure this out, bro, otherwise you're done. Because it's like, yeah, I was making money, but it was just the amount of pressure I was putting on myself. I was still clinging back to the old days and not embracing the new ones. And so it was an eye opener. And so long story short is that when your edge starts to disappear, you can either fight it or you can embrace a new way to make money. And once again, if you've bought yourself some time and financially you're not in a bad place and you can exist long enough, you'll find a way.
Sean, we hear this all. This has become a common discussion. We have had so many early Chicago pit traders on this show, and we find ourselves talking about this situation a lot, where they were used to having this edge earlier on in their careers. They lost it, and they had to adapt as the markets evolved.
Yeah, we had Anthony. We had your friend Matt Kenna on a couple months ago, and he had nothing but great things to say about you. By the way,
oh, I got to catch that episode. I didn't even know he was on here.
He was a wonderful conversation. And, Steve and I didn't even know Matt. Funny story. Steve and I were both in Chicago for a work thing. And that morning when I woke up in my hotel room, Matt happened to say something on Twitter that really just resonated with me. And it hit me. I'm like, oh, wait, he's in Chicago. I should reach out to him and see if he'd like to join us for happy hour tonight. Like, just totally cold reached out. He didn't know me. I didn't know him. He showed up.
He's one of the best people you'll ever meet.
He was there, and we had a great conversation, and we totally hit it off. And then, like 2 weeks later, we had him on the podcast, and he was awesome. And your name came up in our podcast, and he had nothing but great things to say about you. He said you guys are really great friends.
We are. I mean, he was a really big pit trader in the NASDAQ, one of the biggest by far. And, we had very different paths. I remember Pax knowing me back then and being like, what is this kid doing trading on the screen? Pax a little older than I am. And it was just like, I made the move to the screen early, and I used to look down and I would see him in the NASDAQ pit all the time. And we've got a lot of history. I've known Pex for a long time.
Hey, speaking of the pits, I have to ask this. I asked this of every pit trader. Did you ever get stabbed with a pen?
God.
I mean, like literally someone like one of these to me?
Yeah.
No. I'm sure I did get hit with a lot of pens, but I don't know that anyone actually tried to stab me. There was probably there was a couple people that maybe tried to, maybe it just didn't happen. But
I feel like that was the go-to move.
No one tried to actually come at me with it.
I witnessed one. I briefly, for a time in 2004 or 5, I forget when, I was working at the Board of Trade, and I rented a booth above the big Dow futures pit, and I was trading the mini Dow against the big pit. And there was a day where, a skirmish broke out, which was pretty common in the pits. And there was a guy with a pen holding like this. He was like coming after the guy. He's like, I'm going to stab you in the neck. and I talked to the guy next to me. He's like, oh yeah, that happens all the time. Man, I'm surprised it's been 3 months since we've seen that.
No, I've been spit on a million times, gum in my hair, pushing matches, never any fists thrown with me. But it's funny when you first start. I first started in the S&P. I was in other floors prior to that, other pits. And I remember when I first got in the S&P, maybe it was like a month or two in, I was so sick. I've never been sicker in my life. And everyone's like, yeah, dude, that's called the Merc flu. I caught the Merc flu. I was sick for freaking like a week. I was being like, well, what is this? And they're like, yeah, well, when you get 1,000 different people spitting on you, they're like, you got to build that immune system up.
I remember hearing a
total cesspool.
I remember hearing a story about a guy. I want to say it was the NASDAQ pit, but I might not have the right pit. But I heard a story about a guy who was in the pit. He was a little bit newer. He was like a smaller guy. The pit had a lot of big burly guys in the pits, right?
Yeah, they did.
And this guy was a skinny guy, and like he couldn't really get his space. And so he went about the edge, the edge that he created for himself. This is a story. I don't know if this is true, but the edge that I heard that he created for himself is that he decided he wasn't going to wear deodorant anymore. And he was just going to be as stinky as possible. And that created space around him in the pit so that he could get noticed to get, get orders, get order flow. Have you heard anything like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of guys stunk in there. So, I mean, I don't know if how creative that was. The place stunk half the time. It was, I don't know how to explain it. It's like a gym. It was like a gym.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if there was a good smell coming through there, it was like, you're like, what is that? You know what I mean? It's like, it was not the cleanest.
Have you stayed in touch with a lot of the guys that you traded with back then?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I stay in touch with a lot of them, actually.
It's a fraternity, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's the one thing that, it's a brotherhood, right? That'll never go away. And, we'll always laugh about it, and it's like, you see him, you smile, and you just know you were a part of something that, you never really thought about it when you were in there, but when you left, you realized how great it was.
It's a real, it's a real piece of American history, and it's a shame that it's gone away. Like, I'm glad I was able to see the end of it, like, the last few years of it, and to witness it. I mean, and to be in that room with, like, at least at the Board of Trade. I was in the Board of Trade. Like, the closing bell in the grain room and the Board of Trade was a sight to be seen, man.
It was cool.
It was unbelievable. And I miss that. And I wish more people could see that, because that's something uniquely American.
Yeah, I mean, I go back to, I was a Merc guy. And so, just when I think about it, I just think about what it taught me well beyond trading, about just, I think, life in general, about dealing with people, having conversations with all sorts of different people, having to actually be face to face with people and human interaction. I don't think I could ever put a price on what it taught me. I didn't go to college. I only was high school educated, and I learned so much from so many different people there that I don't feel I ever took it for granted, honestly, because I was always somebody who was asking a lot of questions, maybe how I got into podcasting, I don't know. But the human element is so much of what's missing in today's world of trading. I mean, obviously, it's great that you guys are doing podcasts and many others, and I think it's so important. But you never get that experience of being around other people and how to handle situations, how to become a man. Like, I feel like that's so much of what the floor taught me. It was like, as a young guy on there, I started when I was 18, 19 years old. Like, I'm around, people that were worth $1 billion, or people, and just the people like me making $3 an hour working for Lynn Waldock. And you just had you were in an environment of where really the price of commodities is set, and so it was such a unique thing. And I go back to, like, I don't feel like any of us really ever thought about the future beyond of what we were there for. But I think that so many of us look back at it and say, best thing that ever happened to us was be a part of it, because it taught us so much more than just about markets. It taught us how to be better people.
Well, I think that's a beautiful way to end this talk. Adeli, this was great. Really, thank you for taking the time. You just dropped so much wisdom on us. I think our watchers and listeners are really going to appreciate this. Man, and we went over. We promised you we'd keep this under 45 minutes. I think we went an hour and a half, so I apologize for that.
It's a blast being with you guys. I love what you guys are doing. And I can't be more appreciative of you guys inviting me here. So thank you very much.
Wow, that was awesome. That was such a great talk, man. We could have talked another hour with him.
Anthony's one of those guys who, like, I consider a mentor because I've been listening to his show and following him for so long. But actually getting him on our podcast and getting to have a chat was really awesome. This was really a treat.
Yeah, I kind of kick myself. I wish I got to know Anthony a little better earlier on. When I was in Chicago, we were both in Chicago at the same time. We knew each other. We'd pass each other at different events, like social events, and we'd say hello to each other and all that. But I never really, made that big of an effort to get to know him. And I regret that, man. He's one of the good guys, man. He's like, he's got it together. He's got the right mindset, and I just find him very inspiring.
Yes, and he's one of those guys, in our field where he's a natural role model. I think you nailed it at the top of the interview when you said he has this like zenness about him. I think you put that really well.
Yeah, it's a zen that he's earned, right? He didn't he's not just like this like random zen guy who like fell into trading. No, he got into trading and he learned the hard way that he needs to take a step back and, look at the whole picture and he's earned it, and it's refreshing.
And he's really been through it. So first of all, he just mentioned like breezed right by it, not college educated, right? So to do what he did, starting there, crazy. Talked about the health issues, talked about, the just trading issues, right? Having to sell his Rolexes and this and that. So
yeah,
he's really been through it. So he has the experience for sure.
Yeah, dude. Talking to guys like that just really makes this podcast so worth it for me. I know it makes it worth it for you. And I think our viewers appreciate it as well. It's great.
Sean, you say, you guys kind of like, you saw each other in Chicago, but you never, were there like, was it clicky? Because he mentioned like, I was a Merc guy and you were like a CBOT guy. Was it like kind of different crews?
I don't think that's why he and I never gelled, but yeah, that was a thing in Chicago for sure. Right. The Merc guys and the SIBO guys, they hung out at different bars. They went to different parties. There was a rivalry there for sure. It was a friendly rivalry. They were like frenemies, right? I don't think that's why he and I didn't hang out. It was just, look, the reality is Straza. And then when I say this, people laugh at me sometimes, but I'm actually a pretty shy guy. And sometimes in social situations, I wait for the other guy to make the first move. Well,
you know what? It's a bummer you guys didn't hang out more, but at least you weren't stabbing each other with pens.
Yes. All right. Great job, buddy. Let's do it again soon.
This was fun. All right. Adios.
See you, everybody.